This is the InnovaBuzz Podcast, helping smart businesses be even more innovative.
Hi, I'm Jürgen Strauss from Innovabiz. Welcome to episode number 71 of the InnovaBuzz Podcast. Now, today's podcast, we're going to try something different. We thought it would be a good idea to have me answering the buzz round of questions that I normally put to my guests on the show. So we have Mavis Taguba from our Manila office in the Philippines joining us for her very first podcast. So go easy on her, but I think she does a wonderful job interviewing me and guiding me through the innovation round. Now, when we did this, I didn't realize how much I actually talk. And this episode goes for about 40 minutes, which is the longest buzz round that we've had, I think. So I've saved all the great content that we had planned for this episode for a future episode. In the meantime, I think there's great value in the discussion that I had with Mavis today. So without further ado, let's get into the hive and hear the buzz as Mavis Taguba takes me through the innovation round.
Hi, I'm Mavis Taguba from Innovabiz, based in our Manila, Philippines office. I'm really excited as today is my first time on the InnovaBuzz Podcast, and I have the privilege of being the host of a segment. I'm going to speak with our founder and usual host of the InnovaBuzz Podcast, Jürgen Strauss. We thought it might be good to turn the tables on Jürgen and get him to share with our audience how he would answer some of the questions he usually asks his guests on the podcast. So welcome, Jürgen.
Thank you, Mavis. Thank you.
Yeah, how does it feel? Yeah, how does it feel to be on the other side of the InnovaBuzz podcast?
Well, it's a little bit strange, but this should be fun. And I thought it would be a good idea to switch the tables and give you some experience on hosting. So thank you for taking on that challenge. And we should have fun.
Yeah, thank you. It's a privilege to be here and honored to be like a host for the first time. Okay. Well, Jürgen, I'd like to take you through the InnovaBuzz Innovation Round. We call it the Buzz. And for the listeners, you've heard Jürgen say this. It's our innovation round. It's designed to help our audience who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field with some tips from your experience. Are you ready, Jürgen?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. Let's go then. So our first question, what is the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Yeah, well, this is a great question. I guess I'm cheating a little bit here because I have the benefit of a lot of people telling me their answers to this question. So I've kind of encapsulated some of that experience in this as well. But for me, it's about listening to people's problems and their issues and asking a lot of questions. So there's a technique called the 6 whys. So you keep asking why. So every time you get an answer to the question why, you ask, well, why is that? It's a little bit like the 2 or 3-year-olds that will pester the adults all day asking why. And I think, we lose some of that as we get older. It's kind of educated out of us, but I think we should come back and revisit that in a lot of ways because that really does help to generate ideas and to be more innovative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that you said that. I think you start by saying we start with the individual. I think it's amazing to talk to the people first and really know their problems. And that's where they would know that you really care. I recommend we anchor to problems, not just solutions. And
that's right.
And sometimes, instead of spending time to just think of different solutions to their problems, why we just need to understand their problems first and test our ideas against their understanding. And I think that's more we're much more likely to succeed. And
yes, I agree.
I wonder where you get the ideas for the 6 whys.
I'm not sure where that came from. It's something that I read a long time ago, and it just made sense to me, and I remembered that. So I think you make a good point about understanding people's problems first, and it's a lot around. I mean, without a problem, there's no solution, right? So if you have a solution and there isn't a problem for that solution, it's kind of a waste of time. And one of the things that, I'm very strong about NLP and the 5 success principles of NLP. So the first one, of course, is know your outcome. And to know your outcome, you really need to understand what is it that you're trying to achieve, what, in terms of being innovative. Recently we had Ali McGill on the podcast, and he is very strong and passionate about user experience, and he talked about innovation as being, improving the user experience to the point where you're really understanding people's problems and then delivering their solutions. So I think that really encapsulates how I feel about innovation. The other thing I like to do, and we did a lot of this when we were doing research and developing products in the chemical industry, is emulating what happens in nature, because there's so many amazing things that go on in nature that we kind of take for granted sometimes, or we ignore. We just accept that's what happens. And again, if we kind of ask, why does that happen? What's the purpose for that? Why is that plant or that living organism doing that? And then how do they do that? And then you can actually get some ideas from looking at those things as well.
Yeah, I really like that. I enjoyed Ali's podcast with you as well. I like how he's passionate about, really helping people. Because sometimes we tend to think of innovation as fast grow, fast moving, just innovate and innovate and innovate, But, the truth is it usually takes time, really years to go from, your discovery of this problem and, finding systematic method to work on that problem and finding new solutions. And
that's right. Yeah. And I like to say that innovation can be, a big transformation or a massive change in something, but it should be for the better. But innovation can also be, small incremental improvements for the better. That's still innovation. So you're right. Sometimes the big massive changes can take a long time to actually implement. So it's important to really understand what the problem is and know what the outcome should be.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, so we're moving to our next question. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas and products? Okay,
well, I guess I probably reflect back on the first answer, which is asking a lot of questions and listening to people, but reflection is really important, because once you have a lot of information through that process and other ways to gather information, then I find it's really important to reflect on the information and kind of let it percolate in your mind. And that, for me, that brings about a lot of new ideas. And one way I do that, if I go on a long solo bike ride where I'm very focused just on riding my bike, which doesn't occupy a lot of brain cells, I guess. So a lot of the brain is inactive in that part, because most of it is just mechanical, turning my legs over and watching what's happening on the road. If it's a nice quiet road and there's not a lot of traffic, then my mind is usually going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and that's where I find a lot of my ideas and things, and they kind of just pop into my head. It seems to come out of the unconscious mind if I've got a whole lot of information stored somewhere, and then all of a sudden I think of something that could be a way to tackle this particular challenge or problem.
Yeah, I think listening to people, it's a huge thing. to develop new ideas. I remember in one of I think it's our podcast series, I'm not sure who's the guest, but he talked about putting our shoes into someone's shoes.
Yeah.
And learn to develop ideas based on what you learn from that person. We have to, make it a little different, but you still get the base of that, what you learned, and, copy it kind of like that. That's
a really good point, to think in the customer's shoes, if you like, and what are they experiencing? Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes we, as people, we want to be better sometimes, than other people. Then we tend to think, oh, we have to develop these new ideas, but it's really from other people that you could learn. Maybe you could improve other things that you learn from them.
Yeah, and it's fun to work with other people as well.
And I like what you said, that you go bike riding, and I think sometimes you have to step back before you stepping into the space you want to be in. You have to step back and think of the things that be by yourself, and just think of the things that you could do. View the world by yourself. Give yourself a moment to think.
That's right. Yeah, that's reflection.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a really good point. Okay, so we're moving to the next question. Or do you have other things that you want to say?
Oh, I think we've covered it pretty well.
Okay, cool. Okay, what is your favorite tool or system for innovation and improving your productivity?
Okay, now this one, I mean, you know that I love my shiny new toys and tools, and sometimes I create a lot of problems for you when I decide I want to try something out. But I'm not going to list those up here, because I think once we've evaluated things and we like them, I will share them on blog posts and so on with my audience. But what I'm going to say here is mind mapping. So mind mapping is a way to develop ideas where, instead of the normal note-taking technique, you actually put in the center of a blank page your idea or your theme, and you basically around that develop a map, if you like, and it's an image, if you like, of the way the brain is actually structured. And I discovered this back many, many years ago. Probably give away my age if I say when I did. But I found it fascinating because it really did help me to kind of get more systematic about innovation. I use it in productivity. So we're doing mind mapping for a whole range of different things. Some people are really good at actually doing mind maps where the whole map doesn't have a single word on it. It's all pictures. I can't do that really well. I can do stickmen and so on, but definitely mind mapping has helped me over the years, and it's probably nearly 30 years that I've been mind mapping, and I'm still as sold on it as I was when I first got introduced to it.
Yeah, who introduced that to you, or did you just develop it while thinking?
No, the person who developed that is Tony Buzan, is his name, and I'm not sure how I came across this, but he was speaking in Melbourne. He was doing a world tour, and he had a big event in Melbourne where there was probably 300 or 400 people at that event. And I went along to that event, and I learned to juggle in an hour. So that was his metaphor for teaching you to learn new things and how you learn new things. So he actually had us juggling, and I've still got those juggling balls in my cabinet here in the office. But as part of that, he went through the whole process of mind mapping, and this was before the days where there were computer programs that did mind mapping. So everything I was doing was on paper, and I've got lots of paper still collected in various places about mind maps I did and those early training mind maps. So yeah, Tony Buzan introduced me to that, and immediately sold on it. And he's a really smart person. So yeah,
that's awesome that you attend different events to like learn something new. And yeah, like I just love these questions because I know that you're gonna say that like you love shining new tools. Yeah, and it's funny because I like exploring like different things as your assistant, and like sometimes I get used to this tool and you like pop up with a different tool. And I understand that because there's I think in terms of customer expectations and really like globalization, like it has increased the need of our like higher productivity, and you have to make sure to like know different tools and like compare each different tools.
That's right. So it's a delicate balance, really. It's keeping focused on what really adds value and not being distracted by all the stuff, because there's so much stuff happening on the internet and there's so many people doing new things, and not all of them are a good fit for what we do. But like you say, you have to be aware of what's happening, and if there is something there that adds more value to our clients or helps us do things better, then definitely we want to take a serious look at it.
Yeah, and I really like your idea of with mind mapping, because I've done like some mind mapping too. Like we have a mind mapping tools, right? Like you introduced that to me, where we could like see the overall objective, I guess, or like vision of something that we need to do, like a business.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and we also.
I've got a wonderful story about mind mapping, and this goes back to my corporate days where we had a global meeting of, I think there were 600 or 700 people in this meeting, and the business was divided into 4 geographical regions, and I was there as the technical director of the Asia Pacific and Oceania region, and the head of that business had an emergency crop up that morning and wasn't able to make it. And he was supposed to do a 25-minute presentation on the business, the state of the business there, and so on. And as Asia Pacific compared to Europe, North America, and Latin America, alphabetically we were first. And so they asked me to do this presentation, and at essentially no notice. They said, well, you probably know the business better than anybody else that's here at the moment. And I said, okay, I'll do the presentation, but can I go last so that I can sit down and I was trying to multitask because I did want to listen to the other presentations, but I had to obviously prepare to give this presentation to an audience of 300 to 400 people. So I sat down, and while the other 3 regions were doing their presentations, and they had fancy PowerPoint slides and all kinds of wonderful stuff, they did their presentations, and I sat down and just mind mapped. I just dumped everything I knew about the business into a mind map, and using the mind map, I was able to structure it in a way that made sense as a presentation. Beginning with, well, where's the state of the business? What are the challenges? Where are the big opportunities, and those kind of things. And then when the time came, I did the presentation that went for about 20, 25 minutes. Didn't have any slides, obviously, but just worked off that mind map and talked about it and described things. And at the end of it, people came up to me from all over, lots of people I didn't even know and hadn't met before, and said that was the best presentation they'd heard in a long, long time. So, so that, and that was very early in the days of mind mapping, and I just used pencil and paper to quickly prepare that presentation.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like audience love visuals, and for example, if we draw like an accurate map, like you did, like a process of like where they could see like an information flow, I think they could better understand the links.
Yeah.
What you're saying, or like elements of your business, or like what we're trying to discuss with them and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know, like I'm not really like very structured person, I guess, but
we'll work on
I
that.
learned. Yeah, I know you'll help me with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that experience of you with mind mapping. That's amazing.
Mm.
Okay, so our next question, what's the best way to keep a project or client on track?
That's a really good question. That's one I put together, I guess. These are actually quite challenging questions, and when you think about them, there's always what does it mean to be on track? And some of this comes back to the 5 success principles of NLP that I referred to very briefly earlier. And I think, in the blog post or in the podcast that this is going with, I'm going to talk about that a little bit in relation to content marketing. But really, it's knowing the outcome and setting the expectations up front. So things like providing a really good onboarding experience for the client so they know what to expect, they know how the communications are going to be, they know, what are the key milestones and deadlines, and then having constant communication with them. I think that's really important because things do go off track. There's things go wrong, things get delayed, stuff happens. And what, you can't avoid that. So to have constant communication with the client and basically let them know, hey, something's come up, this is going to be delayed, then rather than pretend it's not happening, sort of pretend that everything is fine. And then, of course, they find out that it's not fine. So then the situation is worse. So I think they're the keys, really.
Do you have an example where you use one of the ways or keys that you said with a client and how it turned out?
Yeah, there's one example right now, and he may be listening to the podcast actually, so you'll know who I'm talking about, but we won't name him. So we've undergone quite a few changes in the business over the last 6 months. And as a result, in particular, one project has kind of suffered a little bit on that. And when we took that project on at the time, I spoke with the business owner and I said, well, here's what's happening in my business right now. And, that's going to impact, if we take this project on, that's going to impact on that. We're probably going to take a lot longer than we normally would with this. And he said, yeah, that's fine. That's okay. He was clear on his outcome, and it didn't involve, having this in place super quick, even though he does need it in place. And so we've kind of managed that project along with that client at the same time as all these changes in the business that have directly impacted on it. So I think that's a good example of, communicating with the client in terms of things that are going to impact on the project, on our ability to deliver the project, and yet still have a good outcome.
Yeah, and I think so too. When you have a rock solid processes that you do, a process in place, it's kind of easier to manage client projects.
That's right. Yeah. Well, as you know, I'm big on processes, and and we're continually working to make sure that we've got them all well documented and that they're really tight and working well.
Yeah, and I really like what you said. You have to talk to the client and identify, probably problems long before they become a problem, or well, if you can. If you can see them. Yeah. That's amazing. That will really keep our project, running smoothly with your client. Okay. So we're moving to the final question, I guess. This is the final one. Okay. Jürgen, what's one thing you can do to differentiate yourself?
I think probably half of my guests, when I ask that question, come with some variation of just be yourself. So I'm going to go with that as well, because everybody's unique. So if you be yourself, then you're unique, you're different. That doesn't mean don't look at other people and see what you can learn from them. because you should see what you can learn from other people, but you don't need to copy other people, or you don't need to try to pretend to be somebody else. So I think, being yourself, sharing your unique story with the world. So, nobody's experienced what you've experienced. Nobody's lived your life. So therefore, by sharing, your experience and your life with other people, you're adding value to them and adding unique value to them. And the other one I'd say is bring a servant's heart to everything you do. So, that's something that I know, that we're very strong on is, how can we best serve our audience? How can we best serve our customers? And, having that front of mind all the time.
I just like that, like when you said be yourself, I just could imagine myself just, looking myself in the mirror and before meeting with anyone else, just know myself first and really like see who I am, and building that, I guess, like personal style that I have. Because if we do that, like getting small habits and like seeing what ways, like how you do things, like communicating, I think it will become a kind of like a signature for
that's
us,
right.
like for
Definitely.
you. And so like your audience or your clients will see that and they will attract to that signature of yours. And I like that you said you have to bring your ideas to life. You know yourself when you know yourself and you know what you're capable of. We just don't want to be stuck there, like in your house and not go out.
Yeah, that's right.
And like share your ideas. And people could really see, like I said before, like people could see if you care or you don't care. Like our clients are.
That's right. That's a really good point. They can tell if you care or you're just pretending, and so they can tell if you're being natural or you're just pretending to be something else. Yeah,
especially they're living this business that they have for like 24/7, and I know like you do as well. Like I don't know, they could probably see how if you're living your business or helping them for like 24/7. It's kind of like a professional lifeblood, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to make sure, I think, differentiating yourself. Like I said before, like setting back, have like a time for yourself to see the world, to see how you could help your clients be better, their business, and just love them, like you said. And when they see that, when they feel that, they will more likely to really trust you. It's, I think, like working with you, it's just amazing because we have like this communication, like open communication, and I could see like you're passionate in like helping me out with the job that I have. Especially I like really new into some of the things that like we tackle like every day. But you make time to like help me out, so it's amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to do that, and that kind of, I said something about the servant's heart there, and it comes back because if I help you do your job in time, you take on more. I mean, you're doing this podcast now all of a sudden. You didn't think you'd do that 6 months ago, did you?
Yep. Yeah, like you said, having a unique relationship process is also like one way, like differentiating yourself. Like you've been helping me out, so that's amazing. Okay, so that's really great, Jürgen. Thanks for your time. So where can people reach out to you to continue this discussion with you?
Well, I'm on Twitter, and the handle is @InnovaBiz, and they can also email me, jürgen@innovabiz.com.au. But I definitely love people to comment on the blog posts, at the Innovation Hive. So, whether it's underneath this particular blog or when we've posted other podcasts with other guests, we really love for them to leave comments there and share their experiences, or whether they disagree with the guest or disagree with me. I'm quite happy to have them post comments there and continue the discussion, because, again, coming back to what we said earlier, is talking to people is a great way to get new ideas and generate that innovation.
Yeah. So, people, you hear Jürgen, you can comment and talk to him. He's really nice. Okay. Speaking of experiences, I forgot to ask, what's the number one piece of advice you would give to any business who wants to be a leader in their field?
Okay, I was wondering whether I needed to remind you of that one. Thank you for asking that. So I would say, if you want to be a leader, then lead. If you don't want to be a leader, that's perfectly okay. So it's really just a matter of do it. The Nike slogan, just do it. And I was a huge Star Trek fan as a kid, and I still kind of enjoy watching some of the old Star Trek television movies or series. And one of the things they said in the beginning, I think, go where no one has gone before. And so to me, that is a little bit about leadership. Don't be afraid to do something that's completely different or out there. Don't be afraid to go where no one's been before. The other thing that I've kind of taken on as a bit of a mantra recently, and James Eder, who developed the Causa app, was on our podcast a little while ago. Can't remember what episode that was, but have a look him up, probably a couple of months back. And one of the things he said stuck in my mind, and it was, why not now and why not me? So he was talking about developing that Causa app, and he had this vision, and people kind of said, that's all very nice, but the technology is probably 5 or 10 years away. Sounds really interesting. And his response was, why not now and why not me? So I kind of took that and thought that's a good mantra to keep reminding yourself of as well. So that comes back to leadership too.
Yeah, I like when you said, to be a leader, lead. So, like, for you, how does a leader lead, or how does a leader should lead?
Well, the main thing is to actually do what you expect others to do. So that's part of it. If, like, let's say, for example, I ask you to do something. If I'm not doing that, well, that's not really good leadership. And whilst you may do it because I've asked you to do it, if you see me behaving differently, it's a conflict. So that's not really good leadership. So that's kind of one thing. And then I guess the other thing, in terms of a business sense, where you're trying to educate people and influence people. Part of it is that servant's heart. So, a leader is not the guy that gets up on the podium necessarily and kind of, bangs the table and has fantastic oratory skills and motivates people just by, passionate speech or something like that. He may be, but, a lot of those guys end up being dictators, and they dictate to people what they should be doing and essentially take away their freedom. So in some ways, a leader is about inspiring others. It's about helping others to be leaders. And, so it comes back to that, having a servant's heart. So really a leader is a servant of others in some ways. Not, when I say servant, I don't mean subservient, as in, go fetch the coffee or whatever. But I mean, how can I help? What can I do to help you?
Yeah, I really like that. There was like a quote, like I read it was yesterday, I think, or a couple days ago. It was a difference of like leadership and management. Leadership is like helping people become better. become the best of them, like after you leave them, like management's helping them become better while you were with them.
That's a good one. Yeah. And some of the and this comes back to process as well, because some of a good entrepreneur will build his business to the point where he can leave the business and it just runs as well as it did with him. So whether he decides to sell the business or whether he or she decides to start up something else and let others run that business, whatever it might be, but that certainly is part of leadership.
Yeah, I really like that. And going back to what James Eder said, like, why not now? Why not me? Yeah, I think leadership, you have to like be brave, I guess, to like step up and do that thing, or else like no one's gonna do it, really.
Yeah, that's right. Because if everybody sits back and says, "Oh, in 10 years' time we might have the ability to do that," then nothing's going to happen, is it?
Yeah, or like even people don't want to do it, and you think that you could do it. Just like lead the way.
Yeah,
do it.
That's right.
Yep. Okay. So, yeah, thanks so much, Jürgen. Finally, who would you like to have as guests on future InnovaBuzz podcast, and why? I really like this.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to say here is this is an interesting answer too. I'm going to say I'm going to say a few people. So I'm going to say Seth Godin. I'm going to say Tony Buzan, who I mentioned earlier. I'm going to say Stephen Covey. I'm going to say Edward de Bono, and I'm going to add Elon Musk to that list. So that's pretty ambitious. That's a pretty ambitious list. So those guys are all at the top of their game. They're all very famous. They're all very busy. They don't know who I am. So why would they even talk to me? And in some ways, I go back to the Star Trek Go Where No Man Has Gone before. But thinking back to when I started this podcast a couple of years ago, I had some of those people on my list, and I also had Michael E. Gerber on that list, the author of the E-Myth series of books and now the author of Beyond the E-Myth. And, you could have said the same thing at that time about, that's pretty ambitious having Michael E. Gerber on the list. He doesn't know who you are, and, you've got no avenue to get in touch with him. And as most of the regular listeners know, back in November last year, I had Michael on the podcast. I interviewed him. He spent more than an hour with us. He was very generous with his time. He's a very energetic guy. He's very smart, obviously. Otherwise,
that's right.
Those books wouldn't have been such a huge hit. And when I first started, I wrote this list and I thought, I don't know if ever that will happen. But we did get Michael E. Gerber. So now I'm putting it out there. I'm saying, okay, Seth Godin, Tony Buzan, Stephen Covey, Edward de Bono, and Elon Musk. They're on my list now. So at some point, something will happen and it will give me the opportunity to connect with one or more of those people and perhaps have them on the podcast. So why do I want them on there? Well, Seth Godin, I've been a huge fan of Seth Godin from even before I started my business, which is now 10 years ago. The Purple Cow is one that I really like, which is a book about differentiation. But he's written so many books and he's such an insightful guy. He would be awesome to have on the podcast, and I think our audience would get huge benefits from listening to him. And I know I would, obviously. Tony Buzan, I mentioned Tony as the founder of Mind Mapping, so I'd really love to talk to him in depth about mind mapping and how he developed that and what he's up to these days. Stephen Covey is another author who, the author of the 7 Habits books and First Things First. So I read First Things First probably about 12 years ago or so. I think it might have just come out then. And have been a huge fan of Stephen's ever since. So I'd love to talk to him about, organisation and visions and missions and keeping yourself on track and keeping an organisation on track. Edward de Bono's, he's the master of creativity and innovation. He's written hundreds of books, and his principles. I used to do a lot of his 6 thinking hats. I was actually an accredited trainer for that for a while, and he's got a whole lot of other things that are, fantastic innovation tools. So he'd be another one to quiz about innovation on the podcast, and would add enormous value, I think. And of course, Elon Musk. We all know Elon as the person who made a lot of money out of eBay. Not eBay, PayPal, and now is the CEO of SpaceX and also of Tesla, and has a vision for alternative energy and getting humans onto Mars. So he's leading. He's out there doing and going where no one has ever gone before. So I think that he would be awesome and contribute a lot to our audience with that sort of philosophy.
Yeah, awesome. You never know. These people might be really busy, but like Michael Gerber, you were able to interview him. So
yeah, that's right. Something came up where there was a connection, and because he was on my list, I reached out and was able to engineer a time where I could have him on the podcast. So that worked out really well. That's
awesome. Well, yeah. Well, Seth, Tony, Stephen, Edward, and Elon, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from me to the InnovaBuzz Podcast, courtesy of the only host, Jürgen Strauss. I know these people are going to, have an amazing conversation with you. So...
it'll be an honour to have them on, and it'll be, I'm pretty sure it would be an amazing experience. But yes, we'll need to establish some connection with them and build a little bit of a relationship somehow when we, find out how we can cross paths and then see if they're willing to come and talk to us.
All right. That's good. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jürgen, for being for being on the other side of the bus today and sharing your views with our audience.
Oh, it was fun, Mavis. Thanks for taking over the microphone and hosting it.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have done my first podcast segment and look forward to do more in the future. But you're the great host, so. Yeah. Well, in the meantime, this is Mavis Taguba from Innovabiz reminding you that if you don't innovate, you stagnate. So think big, be adventurous, and keep innovating.